Good morning, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News on the Southern Florida Conservative News Center, South Florida Conservative News Center, Wednesday, April 8th, 10 a.m. And as you saw, there was some good news out there, bad news for the Democrats, and involving the Strait of Hormuz. But don't get excited just yet because there's a lot that goes along with this. And we are going to give you all the information you need to confound your enemies and shut your friends the hell up at breakfast. So let's get into it right now. And what people have to understand, is the important question here is what if the Strait of Hormuz was never the objective? You've seen we've done a number of videos discussing the fact that the Strait of Hormuz was never mined. It's all part of a larger plan of President Trump and the Trump administration, blah, blah, blah. But what if everything you're hearing about the shipping lanes, as I've said, oil flows and global commerce is just the surface layer of something much more direct? Because over the past week, we have watched a sequence unfold that tells a very different story. On February 28th, President Donald Trump announced he would conduct major combat operations against the Iranian government. Joint U.S.-Israeli strikes targeting military and government sites. We're going to give you some background for those who are watching for the first time. Then came the ultimatum. After a brutal fucking bombing campaign, Iran had until Tuesday evening to fully open the Strait of Hormuz or face broad strikes on its critical infrastructure. And to prove that we were serious, the Israelis started to blow up a chemical plant, which is used for various weaponized products. And they'll probably tell you they were making paint there, but not really. So to prove that the Americans were serious, the Israelis blew up the plant. So this time, President Trump tells them, we're not going to target military targets. We're going to hit your infrastructure. We are going to bomb you into the Stone Age, as they used to say. And then just hours before the deadline, Trump pauses and says, I'm going to give you 2 weeks and a conditional suspension of strikes if Iran complied. And what did Iran do? Iran Foreign Minister, what is his name? Give me a second. I'm going to pull this up here. The Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, responded with carefully chosen language because he knows the other militants are watching. Safe passage would be possible through coordination with Iran's armed forces. Obviously not with the Navy because they're at the bottom of the ocean. Not a surrender, not an admission, but coordination. And then we got a confirmation from Secretary of Defense /War Pete Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs Chairman, General Dan Kane, that the strait is open. Ships will sail, the spice will flow. And the administration's framing is that Iran has been brought to a point where it has now voluntarily reopened the strait. Did it ever? So what just happened? Was this about the shipping or is it about something else entirely? And we'll tell you what we think as we go along. To understand this, you have to understand Iran not as a country, but as a system, because as the Democrats point out, almost every Iranian is a law-abiding citizen and would never harm an American, except for those 45,000 that the government killed over there, plus everybody who got killed trying to kill American aircraft, right? But at the center of that system is a group of very, very shady individuals called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. The IRGC is not just a military force. We're going to see a group of these guys show up in another story when we eventually manage the removal of the Communist Party from Cuba. They have a group similar. The IRGC is not just a military force. It is an economic empire. It is a political enforcement mechanism. It is a parallel state. It operates inside energy production, telecommunications, infrastructure development, logistics networks. In Iran, the line between civil and military isn't just blurred, it is engineered to disappear. And that is not accidental, it is strategic. Because when military capacity or the capability of such is embedded inside civilian systems, Any attack against it becomes legally complicated. The American news will start to scream we are violating the Geneva Conventions, although they never actually read them, and that we are just wholesale bad people at the Trump administration. That brings you the political risk. It allows countries like those in the EU to step back and not help. It does a lot of things, and it is called civilian shield integration. And Iran is the master of such thing. That's who taught Hezbollah and Hamas, right? And this is where your favorite washed up congressman and senator of the Democrat Party comes in. This is the Geneva Convention story. Critics of the Trump administration are already arguing targeting infrastructure is illegal, destroying power systems harms civilians. This could constitute war crimes. All important things to say before the midterm elections, which are still a little bit down the road, but hey, you can't pick this stuff. You got to go with it while you can. And here is the reality of this. The law does not prohibit war. It regulates how it's conducted, which honestly, why even bother at this point? And the key test is always the same. Is the target a military objective? It doesn't actually have a list that says you can't blow up my water fountains. Is the target a military objective? And this is where Iran's system creates friction because it was intentionally designed to tie up stuff like this in a legal system. Because if the IRGC is embedded in everything, then what is civilian and what is military, right? And where do you draw that line? And this is where the political fights begin. Opponents don't need to prove that every strike would be illegal. They only need to frame the intent as it's indiscriminate, punitive, and directed at civil systems, which is what you always hear about the Israelis, right? They're always blowing up children. Even though there's a weapons manufacturing facility in the school, the Israelis are always blowing up children. That's how you get to that step. So once that framing sticks, the argument becomes simple. This is not war fighting, it's coercion through civilian harm. In the United States right now, the president probably has another month and a half before Congress could actually interfere in what he's doing. So they're building this pile of shit up that's not going to stand, but it'll give them reason to do another impeachment. They think enough people will come over from the other side because they don't want to be involved in a war crime situation. So they'll be saying this is not war fighting, it's coercion through civilian harm. And that is what we would consider the Geneva Gambit, using the language of international law as both a legal critique and a political weapon. It is an international version of the lawfare that we see enacted in the United States against the Republicans and even some of the Democrats who are not towing the socialist line. So now go back to what has just happened. If this were truly about shipping, you would have seen immediate naval operations, coalition escorts, mine clearing missions. There aren't any mines, but that's all right. Instead, you saw deadlines, threats, and conditional pauses. And most importantly, a demand for action from Iran itself. And this tells you something. This was actually somebody read the famous book we always talk. Where is the book? Somebody actually read Modern Islamic Warfare by Rhode. So the demand for action tells you everything you need to know. This was not deterrence. This was compellence. It was not, don't do this. It was, you will do this. The only thing in Islamic warfare that you can do other than kill them all is to make them afraid. If your dog shits on your lawn, on your carpet, and you smack it with the newspaper, if you remember in the old days, he won't do it again. This is that newspaper. So that is a compellence argument. Not don't do it anymore. You will do this instead. So look carefully at how Iran responded. They did not say, we comply. They said, passage will be possible through coordination. This is classical strategic language for this area of the world. It allows them to avoid public submission. It allows them to maintain an internal narrative. It allows them to preserve a regime legitimacy, but the reality is the strait's open, which means the pressure worked, the signal was received, and the system responded. Iran did not say uncle out loud, but functionally, they said uncle. They moved. And in geopolitics, movement is submission. We made them eat dirt. We made them say their name is Nancy. All these things are summed up in that little sentence that with coordination, we can make this happen. So don't be foolish and think that they are doing this because they want to. They are trying to save their miserable lives and the rest of their shit little government by doing whatever it is the Americans want, because we haven't asked for a regime change. Probably won't either. Probably won't. Well, we make it very hard on these people to do anything. They will not even be able to light a fire without us knowing about it. So now you come to the most controversial part here, the threat to obliterate the infrastructure again. This wasn't random. It was targeted pressure on the systems that sustain the IRGC. Because in Iran, the infrastructure is regime stability. If I don't have an air conditioner, it's 124 degrees. I'm not happy with the Iranian government. It's about energy. They need money. It's about industry. Industry controls the regime, right? So threatening infrastructure is not just military, it's essential. And this is the tension point, because international law says you can strike military targets, you must protect civilian systems, but compellence strategy, which has to be used against Arabs in general, it's the philosophy, it's not a racial thing, it's the philosophy they fight wars under. Apply pressure where it hurts most, force visible compliance, and those two ideas don't always align. As a funny side effect, guess what war violates everything that they're trying to want to impeach President Trump on? If you said the Ukraine-Russia war, you were correct, but that's a story for another day. So what did we actually see was no shipping crisis, was not a legal debate, but a controlled escalation cycle. We had the threat, we had the deadline, we had the conditional pause, we had partial compliance, and we have a public framing of victory, and most importantly, a visible shift in Iranian behavior. And if you don't think the regular citizens in Iran realize that their government is now not strong enough to deal with everything, this is when you will see your regime change. If you're going to see it at all, is after this video montage of 1 million ships going through the strait, the choke point, the one that looks like the finger. When you see all the ships going through there for a week and a half, you're going to think about what it is that the government of Iran actually controls. And while they're sitting there shifting their shit around and saying they're going to help us find the nuclear material, which the Israelis already know where it is, from what I understand, or most of it, they're not going to, and that's fine. But, they're not going to be treated as well. And they realize at this point, they have to lay on their back and open their legs. And they will do so to save their government style, if possible. Because they know that when Trump is gone, the next guy may not be quite as strong. And the same thing in Israel. With Netanyahu gone, the Israelis are in the same kind of situation we are with socialists and idiots, right? So they're playing for time. They're very Asian when it comes to that. They can wait 5 or 8 more years to go back to the weapons building. And by then there'll be something else out there, right? So that's a story for another time as well, but something you should be watching. And you have to understand when you see these kind of political moves made in the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz, of course, as was said before, was never just a choke point. It was a test. It was a signal, a line drawn in public. And Iran, through its carefully worded response, attempted to preserve face, but it still crossed that line. Now, Trump, he could turn around and say, yes, 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 all my bitches, or whatever, and gloat over it. And he is gloating over it right now somewhere. But the debate over this Geneva issue and the infrastructure and legality will continue. But underneath all of it is a very simple reality, and that was about power and pressure. And this was about forcing movement without full scale war. And in that sense, the Strait was never the objective, it was the proof of the administration's activities. And that is pretty much what's happening there. Anyone who decides to try to push against the president's or the administration on war crimes is just wasting taxpayer dollars. Anyone who wants to go for I think they want to go for the 25th Amendment. They wanted to go 24th Amendment, whichever one that means he's crazy. He's crazy like a fox. He's not crazy like Joe Biden. And you'll see things moving along a little bit better now. The joke of course, everybody realizes is that President Trump's 2 week let's wait and see thing does not stop the Israelis from continuing their bombing campaign. They should have negotiated a little bit better with that one, right? But at the end of this, if you've noticed, which is what we talked about at the very beginning of this war, is they are trying to institute a complete package to protect that strait. And that would be led by the United States, mostly, there'll be a lot of players in that. But the thing is, once an actual protection strategy is put in there, Iran's got no teeth left. They have nothing going for them. They are just there. They're going to be bringing in money. I think you'll see from some of these think tanks, what is it, the Defense of Democracy and all these, that the real fear that they've had is that the United States realized where all their money was outside of the country, the individuals' monies, the billions of dollars they've stolen from Iran. Just why was it important to get rid of Soleimani's niece and the daughter, right? To show that we knew where they were. Now, we could have really gone Iranian on them and sent them to Leavenworth or Guantanamo Bay and done whatever we felt like, right? But we were the bigger man. There are a lot of facets to fighting in the Arab world. I am not an expert, but I will tell you that prior to this administration, who the hell was running this place, right? So there you go. Have a good day. It's Wednesday, April 8th. It's early and you can still enjoy the rest of the week. Goodbye.